Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the eTrailer Class 3 trailer hitch receiver on a 2022 Jeep Cherokee. Now once your hitch is installed, this is what it's going to look like when it's on the vehicle. And you can see that it is a hidden cross tube, and that's going to be great because the only thing that's going to be hanging down and visible is going to be the receiver tube opening. And that's going to be nice because you get all the utility, but you also maintain a nice clean OEM look on your Jeep. Now having a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening is going to be great. A lot of your accessories come in that standard. A lot of times you'll be limited with a smaller size or even a larger size. So this is going to be great for your bike racks, cargo carriers, ball mounts. So whatever you plan on doing with your Jeep, great option for it. Now there is a 5/8 hole here for your pin and clip. The hitches don't come with pin and clips. A lot of your accessories will have them when you purchase them. We also have ones that are available here that are locking, so that way when you have your accessories in, you can lock it up, not have to worry about that accessory disappearing. Now if you are planning on towing, you're going to see you have your safety chain loops here, and you can see they're nice and open, so even your larger clevis style, if you have a heavy duty trailer, or even your standard hooks are going to go on with no problem. Now speaking of that towing, you're probably wondering what can it do? And it's a decent amount here. So this one's rated at a gross trailer weight rating of 4,500 pounds. So overall pretty decent. That's gonna be a pretty good trailer, plus the accessories loaded up. So not too bad there. Now you also have a tongue weight rating here of 675 pounds. And that's gonna be just that weight pushed down on here. So when you have your suspended accessories, bike racks, cargo carriers, that's kind of the weight that it's supporting. With 675, you should be fine with most cargo carriers, as you're going to probably exceed that weight limit before you do on the hitch. Now if you plan on towing with weight distribution, that's going to be kind of nice to bump those numbers up. And in fact, this one's going to be going to 5,500 pounds, so pretty good. It's going to bump that gross trailer weight rating up and allow you to carry a little bit more. Now your tongue weight rating is going to bump up to 750, so you already had a pretty high number. It's going even higher there, so kind of nice to be able to inflate those numbers with that weight distribution. Now you're going to want to check your vehicle's owner's manual to see what the Cherokee is actually capable of towing, compare it with the hitch, and just take the lower of those two numbers. That way you're not over exceeding either one, and you're going to stay safe. Now when choosing accessories, sometimes it's helpful to have some measurements, and one of those is going to be from the center of the pin and clip hole there to the furthest point of the rear fascia. It's about 4.5 inches, and that's really important just for your folding accessories. A lot of times you can determine where that's going to sit on the vehicle once you fold them up. Now this one, it's pretty, you have a small amount, that 4.5 inches, so I don't worry too much that your bike rack or cargo carrier is going to hit this, but it is something to keep in mind when determining which accessories you want. Now another important measurement is going to be the ground clearance, and this one comes in at 11.5 inches. So as far as the hitch making contact with anything, not too worried about that, but when you do have your accessories loaded up, it extends the length of the vehicle past the rear wheels. So as you go up that incline, just think about that cargo carrier or bike rack that you have loaded up, and just be conscious of that. That way you're not making contact with the ground and damaging your accessories. Now overall, this install is pretty straightforward. Now you do have to remove the muffler, and main reason is just creating a little bit of a pocket of space to get that hitch up. But overall, it's a pretty easy install. You can definitely do this in your driveway or garage in probably about an hour or so with minimal tools. And honestly, it's not too bad of an install, especially when you get the benefits of a hitch after you're done. It's really going to open up the world of accessories that you can load up on your Jeep and kind of what you can do with your Jeep. So speaking of that install, let's take a look at that now. I'm going to walk you through every step because I want to get your hitch installed on your vehicle. To begin our installation, we're going to need to lower down our muffler. That's going to gain us access to raise our hitch into position. Now before we do that, there's going to be 2 exhaust hanger brackets that will take off, but we do need to support the rest of the exhaust, because once we pull those down, it's going to want to weigh down, and you don't really want this stretch of pipe becoming damaged or bent or anything along those lines. So if you're doing this at home, you can simply use a block of wood or just anything that's going to support this exhaust from dropping too far. But you're also going to want to leave a little bit of room, because being able to drop it down is going to give us that space. So I'm actually using a cam buckle strap here. You can do the same thing at home. And this is kind of nice because it's going to cradle it, but if you need a little more room to work with, you can just simply lower the cam buckle and it's going to drop that exhaust down safely. So I'm just going to create a cradle here. Any point along the suspension is fine. Now we're going to be pulling off the brackets, which there's going to be two of them. There's going to be one on this side here, and you're going to have two 13mm bolts, and it's actually a bracket, which is kind of nice. A lot of other times you got to pry off those rubber isolators, but I'll go back with my socket. I'm going to get my 13mm on there, loosen those up, and then I'll do the same on the other side. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back. So our muffler is dropped down, but in order to really get the hitch in place and also get the muffler out, due to the tailpipes going through those trim pieces by the rear fascia, we're going to need to slide the exhaust out, and that's going to happen by unbolting it here. There's a clamp that's going to be a 15mm, but again, this is all unsupported pretty much until we get up to where it splits. So again, I'm going to just support it with another cam buckle strap. So if you have anything that you can support it with, again, just make sure that you do that now. And really any solid point, I'm trying to find a nice spot that is further back than this clamp here. So you may have to get a little crafty, but as long as you can kind of hook it along or have that seated underneath it, you should be fine. So we'll go to our clamp here. It's going to be a 15mm socket, and we're just going to loosen this up. Now, your exhaust bolts can get a little rusty over time and can kind of round off and get gnarled up. So if you need to, you might want to put a little bit of penetrating oil if yours looks like it has some corrosion or if it's fighting you, and then it should come off pretty easy. So having this just loosened up, we don't need to completely remove that. That should be enough to kind of get this to work around. Now, do be prepared because we do have our strap here and we have our exhaust tips hanging out of those trims here. So once we pull this out and separate it, we're going to try to get this muffler down. Just make sure it doesn't fall on you. So to get this separated, you just kind of go back and forth a little bit, and I'm pushing the muffler to separate. And so now that we have this separated, this is going to make it a lot easier to just slide this back. And that should give us our clearance to get our muffler out. So now that I have that pushed back, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to remove my cam buckle strap here. And then just kind of work these tips out of that small fascia. With one side out, should make it easy to get this other one out. And then we'll go ahead and set this aside. Now we're going to get ready to put our hardware in place to mount our hitch up. But our hitch is going to sit right here on the frame rail, and we have this wiring harness here. So we're going to want to just pry this out. I'm just using a trim panel tool. It works really well to get plastic pieces like this kind of just pried out without breaking. Using a pry bar, a flathead screwdriver could also work. You're going to see there's one here. There's also one on the side. So doing this is going to allow us to get the hitch in place without having that wire sandwich between the frame rail and the hitch. So I'm just going to kind of pull this back. There's also this one up here. We'll just, for clearance sake, move this back. And then we're also going to do the same on the other side. This one I just kind of pulled back. I couldn't get it over. It didn't have the same amount of slack as the other side. So I just actually used the plastic portion that I removed and set it back in this thread just to kind of open this up. Because we have not only these two holes that we'll be using, there's also going to be two on the side, on both sides of the frame as well. So to get our hardware in place, it's going to be pretty easy. We have a carriage bolt. We have a spacer block. So this is going to fit up in there and create a stud for our hitch to not only go on there, but also to be able to secure it with a nut. So in order to get that in place, we're going to be using a fish wire technique. So in the kit, you'll see these coiled wires, and it may seem intimidating, but it's pretty simple to do. we'll just uncoil this. And be careful, they're kind of springed up, so just be careful at this end, especially around your eyes. And what we're going to be doing is we'll start on this one. It's going to be pretty easy to take our coiled end and just feed it back to this open square. And sometimes you may have to jostle it around to find it, but once you get a hand on it, you're going to take your spacer block, slide that over that coiled end. You can just feed it in the frame rail there. And then I'm going to follow it up with our carriage bolt. And then we can just go ahead, pass that up, and then as we pull through, that's going to create our stud. Now, I'm going to make sure I keep my wire on here. It's going to make it a lot easier when we raise the hitch up in place, because otherwise, if you knock this in the frame, you're going to have to kind of fish it out with a magnet. So having this here allows you to keep that stud in place and pull it in when you're aligning the hitch. So once you get this one in, we will get our side one in just by feeding that in. And we're going to need to use this access hole for our final fish wire. So we're going to have a total of 2 vertical studs that we've created, and then you're going to have the one on the side. And those side bolts are really nice for when putting in the hitch. It's actually easier to push this in the frame. Just make sure that wire doesn't go all the way in, which you have plenty of length, it shouldn't. But as we raise that hitch up, and we can just pull this out and through that side hole, and that's going to hold that hitch up. So for now, you can feed that one in the frame, have these 2 down, and then we're just going to go ahead and repeat the process and mirror what we have here on the other side. So now you're going to want to grab an extra set of hands to get the hitch in place. And what you're going to want to do is take those fish wires and run them through the holes that are according to where the studs are. And as we raise this up, you're going to want to just kind of pull that slack of those fish wires to line it up. And as I mentioned before, that side stud, if it's pushed in the frame rail, it's going to make it easy to get this in place by just pulling that fish wire out for that stud to create a holding spot. So I have my side stud holding this up, and what's going to help is getting just a nut on the bottom here started. So the fish wire, you can uncoil it or you can pull and it'll unravel, but sometimes it can snap, so just be careful. And then what you're going to want to do is just kind of put a little pressure on that stud, and we're just going to hand tighten on our nut here, just enough to get this started. Sometimes pushing against the hitch. Main thing is you're just not wanting to push that all the way back up in the frame, so just take your time here, and once you get a few threads started, that should be good to hold that in place. So now I'm going to go through, make sure that I've gotten the nuts hand threaded on all of our studs, and then we can get ready to tighten them down. So now that I have them all hand tightened on, I'm going to go back with my impact and just kind of cinch these down and kind of get our hitch set against the frame. So this is going to be a 3/4 inch socket that we'll use. And we don't have to get too crazy here because we're going to go back with the torque wrench to get the proper torque setting. So just enough to snug this up will be fine. So now with them tightened down, I'm going back with that same 3/4 inch socket, and using the torque specifications in the instruction manual and a torque wrench, we're going to get these torqued down properly. And the main reason being, it's going to make sure that there's not too much pressure on the threads by being over tightened, but also it's not going to be too loose and come loose over time on the hitch. So I'll set my torque wrench to that setting and then just tighten this down. But this is a pretty crucial step, so make sure that you are going through and torquing down each piece of hardware. So now we have everything torqued down, we need to get our muffler back up. And some of the instruction manuals will tell you, depending on the trim, that you may have to trim the exhaust bezel. Currently, I'm not seeing any clearance issues. It's very close to it, but it's not making contact. So I think we should be okay. We should be able to get this fed in and slide this back and then make our attachment up here. So let's give it a shot. Now you may need to kind of push along on the muffler to kind of get it in place, and also getting your brackets aligned where your isolators were can also kind of help get this in place as well. So I'm going to make sure these are aligned with where our holes were. If you want to, you can actually hand tighten those bolts in place. Now, getting our exhaust brackets kind of bolted back up loosely is going to support the muffler, and also it's in those bezels, so that's going to help us get this back in place. And you can see the line where that exhaust met, and you're going to want to match that back up. So sometimes you just kind of need to work this up and forth, back and forth here, just kind of wiggle it until you get those aligned. And if you need to, you can put some pressure on the mid pipe here. And then once that's aligned, we'll go ahead and get that tightened down, as well as those 13mm bolts on our brackets. So now we have our muffler back in place. We'll just need to make sure that our wiring is supported again. Now you might have lost your mounting points. You can see there's an access hole here, but I don't know if our wire's going to be able to reach there. But main thing is we want to keep it away from the exhaust. So there's this one with the stud up here. I'll just go ahead and get that mounted up. And if you need to, you can actually throw some zip ties on here. Just making sure you're not attaching it to the exhaust. But again, this is just going to be added precaution just to kind of make sure that this doesn't make contact and damage our wires. So now everything's tightened and torqued. We have our wiring back up. We just need to make sure that we take our supports or whatever we use to support our exhaust out, and then we're ready to start using our hitch. And that was a look and installation of the eTrailer Class 3 trailer hitch receiver on a 2022 Jeep Cherokee.